rabbis, friends, and guests. On behalf of the BAYT Sisterhood, we would like to welcome you to our joint program with Nishmat. Thank you to Nishmat for giving us the opportunity and the privilege to host this evening with our special guest, Mrs. Rachelle Fraenkel. It is especially meaningful for the Sisterhood to be partnering with Nishmat because of our shared goals in enhancing women's involvement in Jewish life. Our Sisterhood also feels strongly about sponsoring programs which strengthen our relationships with communities and organizations in Israel. At this time, I'd like to call upon Mrs. Simi Kleinberg, Executive Director of Canadian Friends of Nishmat, to say a few words.
Honored rabbis, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. My name is Simi Kleinberg, and I have the good fortune of being the Canadian coordinator for a unique and inspiring educational institution, Nishmat. In 1990, our founder, Rabbi Chana Henkin, established Nishmat to fill a void in the educational landscape of the worldwide Jewish community, which lacked an institution dedicated to advanced Torah learning for women. Nishmat has become a world center for women's scholarship dedicated to developing female leaders committed to halakha as well as to social responsibility. In 1999, together with her husband, noted halachic authority, Rabbi Yehuda Henkin, the Rabbanit created a program to train Yoetzot Halakha to help address the needs of Jewish women striving to live halachic lives. To date, I am proud to say that Nishmat's 100+ Yoetzot are certified as advisors in Jewish family law and practice in Israel, Canada, the US, and Europe, and have addressed over 300,000 halachic questions from all across the world, enabling Jewish women to enrich both the quality of their lives and their mitzvah observance with greater access and comfort. Nishmat is World Jewry's most important resource for educating future generations of knowledgeable, confident, and creative female Jewish scholars and professionals. Our students not only develop a lifelong passion for the study of Torah and halakha, but do so while integrating the religious practices with advancing their secular education. With a wide range of programs, Nishmat meets the needs of women of all ages and all backgrounds. The Alisa Flato International Program welcomes students from around the globe, hoping to advance their Torah scholarship, and is named in memory of our late student, Alisa Flato, Zichrona Livracha, who, while studying in Israel, was cut down in a terrorist attack. Nishmat's Ethiopian Women's Program addresses the needs of a marginalized group and enables them to succeed by teaching them the skills necessary to navigate college and the Israeli workforce. We have witnessed our Ethiopian students achieve great success, with many going on to become social workers, lawyers, and teachers. The Shana Ba'aretz program has allowed foreign high school graduates to immerse themselves in an intellectually stimulating and spiritually nurturing environment, while the Midrasha program caters to Israeli high school graduates who wish to gain chizuk following IDF or national service. And finally, our crown jewel, the groundbreaking Karen Ariel program, which provides the highest level of halachic study and training for Yoetzot Halakha. Our quest to meet the needs of women who strive to fulfill the laws of family purity are further met by Nishmat's Golda Kashitsky Women's Halachic Hotline, established to allow women to clarify difficult halachic issues in a very comfortable manner. On behalf of Nishmat, I welcome to what promises to be an incredibly emotional and inspiring evening, and invite each and every one of you to familiarize yourselves with Nishmat and its many programs and join our family. I will be outside after the program to answer any of your questions and with information about all the programs Nishmat has to offer. And now, I would like to call upon the Mor D'Atra of the BAYT Avraham Yosef of Toronto, my Rav, Rav Daniel Korobkin, to introduce tonight's very special speaker.
Thank you, Simi. Good evening, welcome everyone. Thank you all for being here. And thank you to Nishmat, a truly vital organization, an organization that has directly benefited our community and so many other communities throughout North America and beyond. And thank you to BAYT Sisterhood for so graciously putting this program together with Nishmat. Ladies and gentlemen, the summer of 2014 was a very difficult one for the entire Jewish people. When we heard of the kidnapping, we prayed, we gathered together, and we put aside our differences. On June 30th of that year, almost 2 years ago, the world came crashing down on 3 families when Naftali, Fraenkel, Gilad Sher, and Eyal Yifrach were finally found. It was only later that we discovered that the parents of Naftali, Gilad, and Eyal had already been apprised by the Israeli authorities of the likely tragedy that they would encounter long before the boys were found, long before the public knew. And yet, these families held it together. They went to the United Nations, they went to the media outlets, because they knew that there was a greater good for the people of Israel that they needed to work for. And afterwards, when it was time to mourn, when a regular person would seek to retreat into that very, very private sorrow, a very, very personal, even holy place where no one else can possibly trespass, Rachelle Fraenkel made a conscious decision to do just the opposite. Instead of retreating from the public, she knew the trauma that Am Yisrael was undergoing, and instead of being the comforted, she became the comforter. The chizuk that she provided and continues to provide for our people is just incredible. And when reflecting at that time on what we had all seen, I asked myself, where does a mother find the strength to do this? How does a parent find the courage to persevere amidst the great tragedy? And I reflected upon the famous story that we all know from the Gemara in Sota, that when Paro decreed that all Jewish baby boys would be thrown into the Nile, and there was a great degree of infanticide that was going on in Egypt, Amram, the leader of the Jewish people, decided that Jewish families should stop procreating, should stop having children. And so he divorced his wife and advocated that others should do the same. He couldn't cope with the pain of bringing a child into the world only to see it die shortly thereafter. His daughter Miriam, however, brought him to his senses. She told him that his decrees were worse than Paro's. You would deny them not only this world, these unborn children, but the next world as well, by not even allowing them to be born. Realizing that she was correct, Amram remarried Yocheved, and thus was Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses was born, only to shortly thereafter be placed in a basket, and he too was left possibly unknown to the parents what his fate would be, possibly even to die. This is the indomitable spirit of life that exists within each and every Jew. The ability to continue building, having children, having families, despite the knowledge that it's a dangerous world out there, a world that has antipathy and resentment for the Jewish people, a violent world where those who hate us will shower rockets on innocents and don't place the same value on life. And yet we keep moving forward. We keep building, we keep having babies, knowing full well that their future is chas v'shalom uncertain. We continue to procreate with courage. We raise our children with courage. We send them off on the school bus with courage, and we let them live their lives with courage. We know that life is fraught with danger, but we also place our trust in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that all will be as it is meant to be. So that no matter how much time we have on this earth, We live every moment with meaning, specifically because we know how fragile life is, because we know that a life lived and lost is better than no life at all. And perhaps with this in some infinitely small way, we can appreciate what gives Naftali's mother, Mrs. Rachelle Fraenkel, such courage and dignity. And perhaps one more thing that provides Mrs. Fraenkel with this courage is that she, together with the other families, have seen so many in Klal Yisrael who have honored and continue to honor their wishes. The one thing that the Fraenkels, the Shers, and the Yifrachs asked for is to keep up the Achdus, the unity, and the Ahavat Yisrael. We saw secular Jews, religious Jews, Haredi Jews, all come together over these boys, praying together, speaking to each other, putting aside our differences and realizing that there is infinitely more that unites us than what divides us. And so in tribute and in respect to those families, in tribute and respect to the ultimate sacrifices of Naftali, Eyal, and Gilad, we try our best to labor forward with only Achdus and Ahavas Yisrael. And so despite our stiff-necked nature, we reaffirm that we have to redouble our efforts and ignore all the little fissures and disputes that sometimes crop up. We need to focus only on the unity and in the goodness of the Jewish people. And therefore, we have to accept upon ourselves to fulfill the mitzvah of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow as yourself, with renewed strength and emphasis in our lives. We are all brothers and sisters, we are the Jewish people, and we are all God's children. Thank you, Mrs. Fraenkel, for being with us and continuing to share of your wellspring of strength. Thank you for reminding us of that necessary unity. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Rachelle Fraenkel.
It's on. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. We'll find a way to do this. Thank you to the Rabbi. After those words, I feel like I should really be going home because you've said it all. You mentioned Miriam and the whole insistence on bringing life into this world. And I just learned of a young lady that's in intensive care after giving birth to twins. Someone from the community asked me that the Ahavat Yisrael that hopefully will grow and be sent from here should be sent to the healing and the refuah shlema of Nomi Esther Ora Bat Rezer. And her healthy twins should be joined by their Bezrat Hashem healthy mothers soon. I did not come here with a ready speech. I might be, I don't know. If I would have, I probably would get sick of hearing myself speak, and I'm probably too lazy to prepare it. But these last almost 2 years, I've just been transitioning from saying a year and 6 months to saying almost 2 years. And that's difficult because it's the time that goes by that makes you realize that time has gone by and how irreversible it is. But these almost 2 years were very challenging, and one of the blessings, one of the many, many, many blessings during this time was that we got to meet a lot of wonderful, wonderful people all over the state of Israel, all over the diaspora, mostly Jews, not only Jews, all kinds, all walks of the Jewish life. and I personally tried to have a conversation. So most of what we're going to do is try to talk to each other, and the way I would like to run this is if somebody, and I'll probably start out with a few words, and then we'll see a video clip, maybe to remind us of that summer, and then if anybody wants to say something or to ask something, no question is too personal, just because I've learned to I answer whatever I can, and whatever I choose to go around, I go around. That's fine. And then when we discuss things that way, at least I know that it's interesting for some of the people here. I have been a few months ago in the Ulpana and the Yeshiva, and I met your amazing boys and girls. So we're going to have it in somewhat in a similar way. So we can really talk about what's interesting. For me, I'm coming here, I mean, you too, I'm coming here in the midst of the days of Iyar. Right after Pesach, on the last couple of days of Nisan, we have Yom HaShoah, and then right after that, into Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. And as an Israeli citizen, it's always been a bit of a roller coaster, and yes, it's become more intensive. I'm not even sure how Yom HaZikaron is for me. Our Yortzeit is very soon, and how you handle day-to-day life and these special occasions is not, I'm a toddler in this. We're not even 2 years old. So I'm right out of Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, and Bezrat Hashem facing Yom Yerushalayim, and this is the setting of where I find myself today, and I imagine all of you too. For me, our story is not only a story of Yom HaZikaron, which it obviously is, because one of the major wars Israel is fighting these days is an ongoing war of terror, against terror, coping with terror, living with terror, and it's been years since Yom HaZikaron had become לחללי מערכות ישראל ונפגעי פעולות האיבה, recognizing that terror is part of our war for the land of Israel. I lost my thought, but it's what I was saying is it's not only a story of Yom HaZikaron, but for me it's almost more so a story of Yom HaAtzmaut, and what we as a people could be and are and could strive to be. I imagine I will speak more about it as we go on. I just want to start out by thanking each and every one of you for being with us then, and I can translate this to an endless list of details. The magnets on your refrigerators, the names in your sidurim, the thoughts, the calls, the rallies, the prayers, and on and on and on. Each and every one of them, I want to believe we felt, because we were carried on the prayers, on the good energies that we're sending, and all the good wishes. And then on sharing pain, sharing grief, and sharing the endless power of life of the Jewish people. So just a simple todah, but it's the deepest todah I can express. We felt every bit of it. I'd like to start with the clip. The clip describes that summer. It was a difficult summer because it started out with 18 days of searching for our boys, and then about 51 days of Mivtza Tzuk Eitan, Operation Protective Edge. I didn't apologize for my English, huh? I was born in Israel. My parents made Aliyah a million years ago. I'm probably jet lagged, and altogether this is what you get. But you'll bear with me. So during that summer, there were altogether 75 casualties, our 3 boys, 5 citizens that were killed by missiles, and another 68 soldiers that were killed in battle and by the missiles of the Hamas. And it was hard, it was long, it was difficult, but there was something unbelievable in the air. There was something unbelievable in the air in Israel. There was something unbelievable going on all over the diaspora. When I get to meet people, they say, you know, a miracle happened to us. And I say, what's the miracle? And they said, during those days, first in rallies and in prayers, and then in memorials, and whatever went on, we were standing there together, just like the rabbi said, ultra-Orthodox, Haredi, Hasidic, modern Orthodox, conservative, Reform, so-called non-affiliated Jews, and we were all together, and the elders of the community don't remember this happening for decades. And then I find myself begging them, so find an excuse to do something of that kind again. And part of that miracle is, you know, there's the wound, there's the pain, we're dealing with it, but there's the glory of that miracle. In the video was made for the Shloshim of the boys, the month, it was actually way over a month since they were murdered, but the month since we found them. And you'll see there that there's a lot of talk about the families. And I want to say, first of all, I didn't edit the clips, so I apologize, but also that way before this, and also ever since, whenever the limelight, is that how you say, stops over somebody's face for over a minute or so, you find yourself in awe of another person and another family, and look who we lost, and look how they're coping, and every time you find more and more of these amazing people. And I'm totally convinced that this nation is just made up of unbelievable people. So whenever you hear in the clips they say hamishpachot, it's a general term, okay? It's the mishpacha. So we'll start with the first clip.
הימים האחרונים נחקקו בליבנו, בלב העם כולו, דמויותיהם של אייל, גלעד ונפתלי. היום הזה הפך באופן ספונטני ליום אבל לאומי. העם כולו התפלל לשוב הבנים, והעם כולו ראה את אצילות הנפש, את החוסן הפנימי שלכם ההורים. הנה למדנו מכם שיעור שלא יישכח, של אמונה ונחישות, של אחדות ורגישות, של יהדות ואנושיות. עם שלם עמד יחד וקיבל תזכורת מי אנחנו, מדוע אנחנו כאן. ולא פחות מזה, אלו כוחות גדולים וצורים בנו.
Okay.
אותנו. אנחנו מבקשים להמשיך בתפילות ולהמשיך בכל העשייה הטובה שמורגשת במדינה בימים האלה.
שלי, בזכות הנתינה שלך ללא גבול ואהבת הזולת שלך ללא סייג, עם ישראל מחזיר לך אהבה. כל העם מתאחד.
זו לא הלוויה של חלק אחד בעם, לא קבוצה אחת קורעת קריאה, ואנחנו זקוקים אחד לשני ביום הזה.
בכמה ימים שיש ישראל אחרת, מאוחדת, מלוכדת, מתפללת, לוחמת.
עשרות אלפים ליוו את סמל ראשון כרמלי, זכרו לברכה, בדרכו האחרונה.
אין דבר כזה חייל בודד במדינה. כולם למען כולם. זה פשוט גאווה.
אני חוזר להמשיך את המשימה של החטיבה, להצטרף ללוחמים שעדיין עושים סרטה.
תנוח בשלום ילד שלי. אנחנו נקבעת לשיר בלעדיך. את הקול השני שלך תמיד, תמיד, תמיד נשמע בתוכנו.
גלעד שלי. כפי שכבר אמרתי לך את עקרונות שלי, המשפחה המאוחדת הכוללת את כל עם ישראל, נמצאת היום איתנו ומחבקת אותך ברגעי פרידה אחרונים שהם לא ממש פרידה.
3 משפחות כאלה יכולות להרים עם באים שלא יותר גדול.
So the fair warning is that in a few sentences, I'll probably turn to you and say, so where do you want to take this? Okay? My avodat hamidot is to be able to stay silent until somebody decides to pick up their hand. First, it all starts on a Thursday evening. We had spoken to Naftali noonish. It was the last day of high school. They were on a field trip for a couple of days. Had a great time with his friends. He always came home. He was in Yeshivat Mekor Chaim. He always came home every Friday morning. That day he said he might come home that evening because he's so tired after the trip. And at about 9 o'clock he sent us a text message saying that he's coming home. It took us about an hour to see the text message, but when we saw it, we sent him the answer, oh great, wonderful, we're expecting you. But 3 weeks later, when we knew everything, we realized that our text message got to him 2 minutes after it was all over. We had an early night in. Naftali is big and responsible, and it's fine, we don't have to wait up for him. But then at 3:30, policemen arrived at our home, knocking on our door. because his classmate Gilad, who we never met, was in touch with his family, and at some point his phone went dead, and they were expecting him at home, and he didn't show up, so they started making phone calls. And the friends from school said that he left school with Naftali. So they went to the Modi'in police station, and from the police station they came over to us just to check, they're probably sleeping upstairs. And that's what I thought. And I went upstairs looking for them, and the beds were empty. And then we tried his phone, and the phone was dead. And then we knew we were in trouble. And I was thinking about traffic accidents, and my husband, Avi, joined Ophir, Gilad's father, and they drove through Bet Shemesh up to Kfar Etzion. And about 2 hours later, we got the last location of their phones. It was in the Hebron area. We live halfway between Tel Aviv and Yerushalayim. It's the exact opposite way. And at that point, we realized what kind of movie this is going to be, to some extent. During this time, we sat multiple times with the Prime Minister, with the Minister of Defense, with the head of the army, with the head of the Shin Bet, the Shabak. And this is where I want to say something contradicting what the Rav said. We had no idea that the boys were killed, not to the last, very, 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 very last moment. Everybody was very, very honest with us. They said, we know there were shots in the car. We knew that because Gilad was brave enough to phone the police and to say we were kidnapped. And then the phone stays on for about 2 minutes, and there's some puffs in the air, and we were told those were gunshots with silencers. But what we were told by all these people, and they were very, very honest, they shared any relevant information. They said, look, all the options are open. On one hand, this is what we know. On the other hand, when we look in the area, we find preparations to hold hostages long term. This was meant to be a hostage situation. We don't know what happened. Could be that they were shooting just to scare them. Could be that they murdered 2 and they're keeping 1. Maybe they're wounded, maybe they're alive and being hidden somewhere. All the options are open. We're working under the work assumption that we're looking for live people. And frankly, I believe that if they wouldn't have been looking for live boys, I don't know if we'd ever get them back. I was waiting for my son for 18 days. I met Rachelle Sportas. She waited for her son for 81 days. The mother of Ilan Sadon waited for him for 7 years. And in the state of Israel, there were cases that were never solved. And these are all Hamas operations. We chose to be optimistic. We had good reason to be optimistic. As a mother, I don't care if, nobody told me the chances of getting your son back is like winning the lottery, but keep up your strong facade because Am Yisrael needs you. That was never the case. They said there's reasonable, chances, and I don't care as a mother if reasonable is 10% or 40%. And I was preparing myself that if we get into a negotiation situation, that might take time. So I was trying to breathe deep. Others in our group of 6 parents, every night before they went to sleep, they were sure it'll be over until the morning. And every morning when they opened their eyes and it wasn't, it wasn't brought back, it was a great fall. But all in all, about a year later, we were brought in the army, and people involved, civilian soldiers. There were so many people that needed closure. So the army organized to bring us to Khalkhul, where the boys were found. And this is an area that's in Palestinian Authority. You can't really usually get there. And at some point we were standing there. They showed us where the boys were found. And we were standing in front of this area, and this is after the intelligence, through technology, narrowed the search area. And you know, the expression, we will not leave any stone unturned. There were millions and millions of stones and rocks and caves and holes in the ground and under, you know, places under houses, places under, and again, I realized, but this was in a very physical way, first of all, what divine grace was that we even got to bring them home and to bring them to Perlis. And what unbelievable Mesirut Nefesh, total devotion by thousands and thousands of soldiers, by tens of thousands of mothers that were calling the other soldiers and others and all over the army saying, don't come home without the boys. And people that were praying and people that were contacting their parliament members and arranging for us to go to Geneva. And the next thing on our agenda was some Italian Jews managed to get us a meeting with the Pope. Thank God we didn't get there. People all over Israel and people all over the world were doing what they can, and if they didn't have something physical or practical to do, they were praying, and if they didn't pray, they sent, you know, good wishes, and they cared, and they, in a world where, you know, dozens of people are murdered, I don't know, maybe on a weekly basis, and nobody even winks. Here there were 3 kids that didn't come home from school, and millions of Jews around the world were losing sleep over it, checking their phones every 10 minutes, you know. So this is, you know, my opening remarks. And really, I would gladly take this anywhere that's interesting to you. So if you want to say something, so I'll give you the microphone and you can say it. And if you want to ask, so you'll ask loudly and I'll repeat it so everybody can hear, okay? This is the time where I breathe deeply. So. All right, let's go. Listen, you're not going to break me. I was in London, and they told me that British people are very polite. They never speak up. But we went through this. Yes?
Where did you get your base for your Amuna? Where did you draw on? What was your foundation? What gave you that wherewithal to just forge and advocate and be such incredible representative for Cloddesville people?
The question was, where did I get the Emunah?
Where did that come from? Even from your home or from your...
I kind of feel that I didn't have any choice. You know, it was just something that was. We found ourselves in the midst of this, and whatever we had with us is what we used to cope on a daily basis. I'm trying to figure out which direction do you want us to go? Tell us.
Because of the light, I'm looking over to there, so can you do this that direction? Is it too much?
It's just because of the light. Sorry. Just light things. Okay. באמת, we're totally, absolutely, it's okay, don't worry about it. Ordinary people. I'm not saying this bitsniut, believe me, my kids can testify. And you deal with what you get. And you, during the days of the search, we were first of all getting unbelievable support from family, from community, from neighbors, from friends, eventually from all of Am Yisrael. It took us about 48 hours to realize how big this is. And we needed a bit of time to see what our role is, because we saw that every human every possible effort is being done by everybody. And our role was to buy time for the government so they can continue the search, because it was pretty obvious that at some point there'll be pressure on the Israeli government to stop and stop disturbing the Hebron area and whatever. And our role, as we saw it, was to bring our story out and to see what we can do. Thanks. to see what we can do to buy time for the government. So this is, and since we were so focused on that, we had reason to wake up, to live another intensive day. I remember telling myself, you can always break down later. It could wait. Do you want to, in Hebrew, and at some point, I remember asking myself, do you not love your son enough to, I don't know, to fall apart? And then on the way to Geneva, I was online with people, and someone with a uniform walked over to me, and they approached me and they started saying something about what everybody wishes, and I was like, in a second, I was in this movie I made for myself, where I was sure that he's pulling me out of the crowd to tell me that they were found and everything's okay, and it took another few seconds for me to realize that he recognized me and he came over to wish the best like everybody was wishing. But for 5 seconds there, I was sure that he came to pull me out because they found him. And then I went on the plane, and when I got off the plane, I put on my cell phone, and within a minute, 2 or 3 messages came in. And there were text messages from my husband asking me about the details of my son's wristband. Now, I already spoke to the Shabbat about his sandals, his glasses, the clothing he wore, etc., etc. And this was something about his watch. And I called him, and he didn't answer. And again, within seconds, I was already in this horror movie where I was sure that they found them, and they're had to be recognized because they were in such condition, and he doesn't want to answer the phone because he doesn't want to tell me over the phone, and it was like within a second. And then I told myself, okay, then he called back, and it was just another regular question about all these things. But I realized that if in a few seconds I can be in high heaven, another few seconds I can be so low, I'm normal. So that's what, it's day after day, and you cope with what you need to. All of us did surprise ourselves, I think, by the amount of control we had over where our thoughts went. There were so many dark things to think about. Are they alive? Are they being kept? Are they going insane? Are they together? Are they separated? What are they doing are they tied together, and very, very quickly, every one of these really dark thoughts was like touching electricity. You immediately lost all your energy. And we learned to stay away from that. We learned to say to ourselves, not useful, it could wait. And I'm not talking emotionally, because eventually you have to deal with everything, but it was a very surprising amount of control over what you think about, where you let your thoughts go. And so beyond that, there was prayer, there was support, I could go on and on, but thank you for being the first to ask a question. Thanks. Yes?
As I think everyone, unfortunately, has some sort of a view position on how they feel about terror. After being a mother of a victim of terror, did your views change? Did your family's view change? Did your community's views change? Did they soften? Did they harden? What happened after?
I can't speak for my whole community. I can speak for myself. My politics didn't change. And being a mother of a victim, which makes our family in a way a victim, doesn't make me an expert on the topic. During that time, one of the things that kept us sane was that we did not consume media. We didn't read newspapers, we weren't on the internet, we had an IDF team living in our backyard. They were negotiators, they were waiting for the phone call, they were watching us to see that we're okay. And they were our source of information. If there was anything real, it would come from them. There were a lot of WhatsApp rumors, and the rumors, even Friday, there was a rumor that they were saved and whatever, and it didn't touch us because we had the IDF people talking to us, but then we had to answer all these congratulating messages and say, not yet, Pesach Hashem, not yet. And what happened, so I didn't listen to any, papers but many months later, somebody showed me an interview I gave for the Times of Israel. And there the guy says, what do you think about exchange deals for terrorists, for hostages, etc.? And I saw myself saying, and this was about 10 days into the search, I don't think I remembered this interview so well, but it was surprising for me because I saw this lady speaking to this man, and I hear myself saying, listen, maybe you'll come back here in a while, and you'll see me screaming off the rooftops, do everything you can to get my boy back. And I want to tell you now that this lady screaming off the rooftops, don't listen to her. Do what's right. I don't know what the right answer is. It could be releasing 1,000 hostages, and it could be endangering 30,000 soldiers. This is a major issue in Israeli public life. I have a friend who was wounded, and her husband was murdered by a terrorist that was released in the Gilad Shalit deal. There are, and on the other hand, I'm not sure that Israeli society at that point had any choice but to take the deal, because we're at a certain point as a society. So the people deciding this, they have to be experts in not only generals, they could be rabbis, there could be ethical issues here, this has to be, it's something to discuss seriously. I'm only Naftali's mama. Thank God I didn't have the nisayon of screaming off the rooftops. I would stand and scream there for a very long time if there was any chance to get him back, but that still doesn't make it the right decision. At the time, people said that uncertainty is the worst. And I was saying, I'm willing to wait for 5 years as long as as long as he walks in here well. Since we know now that it was over in minutes, which is also a chesed, if it had to be over. Your question was, do I have any other ideas about terror? Is part of our day-to-day war. It's part of our survival war in Israel. Even they're saying that, God forbid, in the next war, and in Israel it's always God forbid in the next war, they might be more people coming from the Orif, how do you say Orif? The civilian area to the front lines, telling soldiers about casualties in their families from missiles than the other way around, which is the normal thing for war. The way our situation is that war is from within, and war is through missiles, and war is in the front line, and we just have to keep up. And I still hope for peace. It's not like, I'm just not naive. It's not going to happen tomorrow. Amen, amen, amen. Okay.
I know that your career
First, I'm very lucky. I work in two amazing Torah places that teach Torah to people. It's Nishmat and Matan to women. And I was doing what I passionately loved before, and I'm lucky enough to continue doing it today. So that's just a blessing. My personal direction is more of a Talmud, Gemara, and Halacha, and less of Machshava and Emunah and Chassidut. I do find myself in search for words and for ideas to deal with things a person needs to deal with as life goes on, sometimes in this way, sometimes in that way. And I get introduced to languages of Judaism that I was aware they were there, but I didn't speak the language. I still don't speak the language, but I'll give you maybe a couple of examples, okay? My family is Hasidic. My mother's side is very Hasidic. My father's side is somewhat Hasidic. And I never connected to that, but maybe because my father is one of the people of Torah and Derech Eretz. He's a scientist, he's a Talmid Chacham, but it was always about, rationality. And that's most of how my world works. When people ask about sometimes people ask about faith and the idea of crisis and faith, and when you're disappointed, when you don't get what you want, when you don't get what you prayed for. And I realize there's such a concept, but in my world it seems irrational. Before there were bad things happening to other people, and this time something bad touched our life. So what changed? I was a believer then. Rationally, what changed? And as far as Emunah goes, my experience is dafka of when you go through something like this, you feel so fragile, you feel so vulnerable, you feel exposed, and you're connected to the real stuff of life. And if something, it's a lesson in humility, a lesson in anava, a lesson in proportions, which for me means a lesson in Emunah. So to me, this experience was, humbling and an experience of faith. But I can realize that this goes for many people in many different directions. And I found myself at least a couple of times trying to say things, and I'm not very, not very sophisticated in the way I speak. And then somebody hands me a piece of Seir Nachman of Breslav, and he says the words, and he says it so eloquently. Oh, my English. There's this story. Everybody knows it. I'm quite convinced that it's of Christian origin, but I like telling it like it's a Baal Shem Tov story. It's about a person in the end of their life, and he gets shown the path of his life in the form of tracks in the sand. This is the part where you also, we know the story. So everywhere he sees his life, and everywhere he sees two pairs of tracks. It's his own tracks and HaKadosh Baruch Hu's tracks walking with him, hand in hand, throughout the path of his life. And then he looks closer, and in the sharpest curves, in the most difficult turns, he sees only one pair of tracks. And he turns to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and he says, Hashem, how could you do this to me? In the worst times of my life, you left me alone. And Hashem, pats him on his head and says, you silly man, on those times I was carrying you in my arms. Now, it's a great story. I can testify in my own life, it's 100% true. And then someone gives me a piece by Nachman Breslav, and he has a drasha on the pasuk, Batzar Yirchavta Li. And he says, literally that means that you made space for me in the narrow places. But Nachman says, it's not just Batzar Yirchavta Li, you helped me, but בצרה עצמה, in the trouble itself, in the darkest times, there's more chesed, I might say, than anywhere else, but there's a special grace, a special chesed, a special holding in the metaphorical arms of Hashem in the tzara itself. And I found myself suddenly learning Reb Nachman. And I'm this, rationalistic, mara halacha, I don't understand Chassidut. And they gave this to me and they said, wow, look, he gets it. Of course he gets it, but I didn't get it before. It happened again. I have a couple more examples. I don't want to go to trouble you with more and more. But I'm learning the languages. But I'm a beginner with this. This is not my native tongue. My native tongue is more the sugiyot and the halacha. And yeah, I've read a couple of books. I'm friends with, new friends with Sherry Mandel. She wrote 2 amazing books that help people both cope and develop resilience. Whatever. I'm open to learning. If you have suggestions, I'll take them. Yes?
Can you please tell us a little bit more about Naphtali?
I'm given the opportunity to speak about Naphtali. Thank you. It could still occasionally happen, but it mostly happened at that time where I'd walk in the street and someone would stop the car next to me, roll down the window, and a lady would say, גברת, הילדים שלכם צדיקים, בזכותם מצאו את המנהרות. And like, oh, you have righteous children, Naphtali was a tzaddik, this is how we found the terror tunnels in Gaza. And I would be a little bit shocked, and I'd say to myself in my heart, first of all, I have a problem with this concept of, because of this, that happened. I mean, I believe Hashem runs the world, but I could never point out how exactly. And statements like, bizchut someone, this happened, or in the fault of someone, that happened, I never feel comfortable with on a theological level. But beyond that, I'd say, Matzadik. He's a 16-year-old kid, he's a teenager, he fights with his sisters, he's Naphtali. And then, last winter there were a couple of days we were supposed to be snowed in Yerushalayim. I live outside Yerushalayim, but I work in Yerushalayim, so I know I'm going to have 2 days off. It's not Toronto snow. We get about 4 centimeters of snow and the whole city shuts down. That's how it works. And usually the next day you have many very, very disappointed kids because it didn't actually snow. I know Toronto doesn't work like this. So I knew I'm going to have the next day off, so I said, okay, I'll sit down and I'll read some of the materials that I was postponing. I got letters from very close friends of Naphtali, and it was a bit too much, and I said, okay, I'll read it later. And I had this letter, I think maybe for 9 weeks, and I hadn't read it yet. And I said, okay, tonight I'll read it. So I read and I wept, and I read and I wept. And then I went over to Naphtali's drawer, and we don't have so much stuff from Naphtali because, first of all, my daughters accumulate unimaginable amounts of stuff. My sons are, they have their 2.5 shirts and whatever it is. And besides that, it was the last day of school. And Naphtali packed everything he had in this huge, huge bag with his tefillin, with everything, and it was all burnt. So really, I have a drawer, maybe a couple more things. I mean, whatever we have, otherwise we use his guitar, we use his jacket, we use his bed. There are no museums by us. But I went over to the drawer, it was months after the deed, and I moved things around and I found an envelope full of money. And I turned it around and it said, Maaser Ksafim Sheli, my tzedakah money, I don't know, from his little jobs that he did once in a while. And then a family friend called and I answered the phone and I was telling him what just happened. I was crying. I said, look, I found this envelope and this is what it said. And he said, you had that coming because you said he's not a tzaddik. So So what can I say? He was a high school student. He had interesting combinations, a very cynical sense of humor, a cynical attitude, but then you'd see him davening, it was dvekus, really. And he on the one hand, he know how to be very critical, on the other hand, he was very sensitive to people. He was extremely musical, and in the last year, he taught himself guitar, he was playing the recorder, and he had an MP player full of any style of music he can get his hands on. Classic, jazz, Hasidic. He asked me for my oldies, you know. I later learned this is exceptional, that your son comes over to you and says, okay, so what should I listen to? And his sisters were asking him, this is the music you're listening to? And he said, you have to hear every song 3 times before you decide. And then it became a metaphor. It was very athletic, basketball, whatever, and he loved Yeshivat Mekochim. He had wonderful, wonderful friends there. He was in the process of growing. You know, these kids that had everything very easy for them, and then comes the point in school where you really have to start learning. I know I never managed to get through that point, because for years and years, everything's easy, but then you take upon yourself something that really needs hard work. And for Naftali, it was the math matriculation. And during that year, we were watching him take responsibility and grow, and do it on his own, and actually go through that phase of, oh, so not everything is easy now I have to work. He went to a Talmud Torah where they recited all day when in elementary school, and then one day a week he would spend in a program for gifted children where there were girls, there were secular kids, there were Arabs, and somehow his week looked very harmonized. He lived with the Talmud Torah fine, he lived with this program fine. And yet, for a 16-year-old kid, most of what you can say is what could have been, and what we're missing out on, and everything I see his fellow classmates going ahead and doing. Thanks for the opportunity to speak about Naftali. Yes?
Before and after, how did they act, and how did you bring exposure to all go through it?
You're getting me started on my kids, I guess. The question was, how are my other kids doing? How did they go through, I imagine, the period of the search and then afterwards? So basically, it was Friday morning. We sent the kids out without telling the kids that something happened. Abby was out looking for them, and I got them organized for school and for kindergarten, and I didn't tell them anything was going on. But then a couple of hours later, I realized that the names are already circulating. Israel is a very small place, and you can rely on it that if everybody in Yeshivat Mekochim is looking for someone, so everybody from Eilat to Metula knows that they're being looked for. I then went to my daughter's school, and they were in the middle of some kind of celebration, and they didn't want to go home. So I stood by there just to make sure that nobody goes over and speaks to them. I now realize how surreal that was, because there were other parents there that knew that something was going on, and they didn't understand what I'm doing there in the middle of this party. But then eventually I took them and I spoke to each one of them, and I took my Nama was at the time just 6, I think, and I said, Nama, Naftali got lost and everybody is looking for him. And she burst into tears and she said, oh, we're not going to find him, just like we didn't find our dog, Open. And we had a dog that disappeared. We did everything people do when they search for dog. We did not find him. And you know, everybody understood things on their own level. And the period of the search was very ambivalent, because it was a bit of a carnival, you know. It's like the Big Brother's house. There are 40 photographers outside. And, by the way, very, very respectful. The relationship with the media was unbelievable at that point. And people going in and out and, taking care of us. And then every night I'd put them to sleep and we would pray and we would laugh and we would joke about when Naftali comes home, what a balagan he did here. And then I'd always end with Hashem yaseh tov be'enav. And Hashem will do what Hashem will see fit. And I explained to my children what I mean by that. And again, because I was afraid at that time for something that's called in Masechet Brachot, it's called Iyun Tefillah. Iyun Tefillah is a concentration in prayer that on one side could be understood as something very positive, and on the other side, beyond a certain point, it's prohibited. It's that point where a person feels that they can hyper focus on davening, where they can, force a Kadosh Baruch Hu into something. They're demanding instead of, begging. And I was afraid that something like that is happening. So with my kids, I was constantly saying, all the good optimistic stuff, but also all the options are open. And Hashem will decide, Hashem will do what Hashem will do. Eventually, the hardest thing I ever did was when we got the bad news to break it to the kids. Each one according to their age and how close they were to Naftali. One of my girls was, I think she felt some kind of nervous energy in the air and she went to a friend. And then a couple of hours later, my sister brought her back and she sat outside the door, she didn't come in. And then my sister went over to her and said, you don't want to know yet? And she said, no, not yet. And then a few minutes later, she's 11 at the time, she came in and we spoke to her. And then the younger one that was 9 at the time, actually went to sleep over by a friend. It was the last day of school in the elementary schools, and she and a friend went to sleep over. And we were debating what to do, and we decided to give her one more night of nachat and to speak to her in the morning, because we had so many decisions about the funeral and everything. And then we brought her over in the morning and we told her. And a full year later, on the last day of school in elementary schools, she and her friend decided they're going to turn this into a tradition. They're going to go to sleep together on the last day of school by the friend, and apparently it wasn't so convenient for the mother of the friend, and she said, well, maybe we'll do it on Wednesday, maybe we'll do it on Thursday, and they insisted. They said, we're going to go to sleep by the friend on the last day of school, and we'll wake up in the morning, and nobody's going to die. So, psychologists amongst you will say this is a corrective experience. But these were, at this point, 10-year-old kids just working out of their intuition. And I've seen this over and over again. There is this power of healing that I see as truly as a divine gift. It's clearer by children. It's easier to see it on children. I believe we all have it. But seriously, I saw it. Gilad and Naftali's classmates, they went through really a horror story, and then there was the Shiva, and then at that point they were supposed to go for vacation, to go each to their own home, and that was the worst, because who wants to be alone at that point? And they decided they're going to go on the Israel Trail. They'll spend 2 weeks on the Israel Trail from Metula to some point. And some of the parents were very nervous because they've gone through so much and they just lost 2 friends, and there'll be no adults around and no professionals, and what if someone has a breakdown? And Rav Dov Zinger and the educational staff in Makor Chaim told them, trust them, they know what's good for them. And they walked together, and they cried, and they laughed, and they do all the silly things that 17-year-old kids do. And they invited us for the last day, 2 weeks later, and I saw them, and their faces started to change. And I think really it's about trusting the healing process, trusting it within ourselves, trusting it in our children. I think about a month after this all happened, I was putting my kids to sleep and they were saying Kriyat Shema על המיטה, and they were saying, בשם אדוני אלוהי ישראל, מימיני מיכאל, משמאלי גבריאל, מלפני אוריאל, מאחורי רפאל, נפתלי מסתכל ומעל ראשי שכינת אל. They rhymed in Naphtali with the guardian angels. And Shlomo, that was 4 years old at the time, said, but yesterday we said Naphtali, and I hadn't noticed that they did this. And Noga said, but we repeat this 3 times. So ever since, they say one for Eyal, one for Gilad, and one for Naphtali. And at the time, I thought it's just a cute story. Today, I realize, Bezrat Hashem, they could be 80 years old and still saying this, and feeling that their brother is with them, and really, it's some inner force of healing. Naama said, even there's something good about Naphtali dying before I started Kita Aleph. I said, really? And she said, yeah, he's been going with me to school every day since then. Again, nobody told her these things. It's like the IDF team that was living in our home was very significant for us. They were a source of oxygen because there were some people that we could trust, and we knew that whatever they say, it might not be much because they can't say much, because we don't have much information, but everything is accurate. And at some point, I'll just say some of them at least, were from a very different background from ourselves. Just as an example, one of them wanted to speak to us on a Sunday morning, and he thought we were busy, and he said, I'll wait until after Kiddush. So now, this person is a tzaddik yesod olam. I can say this in religious language. He's an absolute tzaddik. And as far as Jewish, standing, whatever, we're so far apart. And we're learning so much about each other. At some point, actually for 4 weeks in a row, in the time of Suda Shlishit, in the Shabbat afternoon, our community closes down on Shabbat, so we had some quiet. The journalists were more than happy to get a few hours off. And our whole street would fill up with maybe a couple of hundreds of women and girls that would sit there and sing Shirei Suda Shlishit, quiet songs, and they'd call us out, myself and my girls, and we'd sit with them and we'd sing. And this guy that I was describing from the IDF team, the first time it happened, he walked to the front and he saw the whole street full. I imagine he'd think, what kind of religious thing is going on here? And he asked my sister, what's this? And my sister said, this is called support. And really, we learned so much about each other. And the reason I remembered this was because you were asking about the children, and I was talking about healing. At some point in time, a few days into the story, we were given the opportunity to listen to the tape of the phone call that Gilad made. And we knew, the dry facts, but we didn't know if we could recognize Naphtali's voice, what we're going to hear. And I approached one of these IDF people to prepare me for listening to this phone call. He's a psychologist by training and by profession, and he didn't know what's going to be there either. And he said, Rachelle, what are you afraid of? And I said, I don't know, I know I'm quite focused, I'm okay, but this is gonna come in a different channel, hearing stuff. I'm afraid I'll fall apart. And he said, okay, so you'll fall apart. Then what? And I thought for a second, and I said, well, I guess then I'll collect myself and get up. And he said, that's right. And those were such simple words, but for me it was profound. Just to hear him say, you can do this. And today I put that together with another story that happened about 3 months later, Erev Rosh Hashanah. We got a phone call from an amazing woman called Chagit Rain. She's the mother of Bnaya Rain that was killed in Lebanon a few years ago. And I later realized that she must have made 75 phone calls during that weekend, just that week, because it was after the war already. And she said, listen, I'm just calling you to tell you that the fear that you're feeling now, the anxiety you're experiencing now of being in the holidays without him, Rosh Hashanah without him, Sukkot without him, this fear is worse than the holiday itself. And I heard her. I understood what she's saying. In fact, it was eventually true. And it calmed a little bit of what I was feeling. And today I put these two stories together, and sometimes I speak to young people and I offer that. I say, we all have, B'ezrat Hashem, nobody should go through this crazy story, but we all have things we fear and anxieties. And often our fear is worse than the thing itself. And even if chas v'chalila, the worst thing in the world happens, and even if we fall apart, we have it within us to collect ourselves and get up. Sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days, sometimes it could take a year or two, whatever. But we have this power of healing. And you see it most with the children. You constantly see it with the children. So, again, stories about my children will never end. Yeah.
Did you ever get a timeline of events? What led up to the time up until they were taken? And did they find the Hamas that did it?
The question was, did I ever get a timeline of events? And I'll tell you, it's okay. I'm okay, I'll take care of it. It's okay. Did we get a timeline of events and what they caught? So, yeah, basically the timeline of events, we later knew what's beyond that. My boss and mentor, Rabbi Chana Henkin, who lost her son and daughter-in-law in this terror wave in Sukkot, she speaks about when you read the indictments, the Ktav Ishum, you can actually picture a split screen of, on the one hand, this young family doing their PhD and raising their kids and, whatever they're doing. And I can say for my son going through high school. On the other hand, these things take about 6 months to plan, to buy the weapons, to buy the car, to get okays from the heads of Hamas. And you see these things happening in a split screen, and then in 1 second, it just joins together. And I know that on Wednesday night they went out searching, and they came back without hostages because they didn't find anybody suitable. And then they went again Thursday night, and the guy that was waiting for a sign to come take care of them also said that he, as he was approached by the people that murdered them, he said, but why did you kill them? We were talking about hostages, and they said that they resisted. Now this is what it says on that indictment. I don't know what's true. The 2 people that were in the car at the time were killed 3 months later in a battle in Hebron. The person that organized it directly got 3 life sentences in the Israeli court system and jail. There were about 20 other Hamas people involved in Hebron, and the funding came from Gaza, from Hamas Gaza. That's basically what happened. I have like a couple more minutes, so I want to say 2 things. One has to do with you were asking how the kids are doing, and I think their force of life and healing is something from within. It doesn't come from us. But the message that we were trying to live ourselves and to give our children was one of, it's okay. It's okay to cry. It's okay to be happy. You don't have to get permission. There isn't any proper way to deal with this. I've seen different styles of grieving over these 2 years, and families where they say, by us nobody cries. Or, seriously, I think they imagine their soldier looking down at them. Or families where just one of the members of the family says, in this house, nobody's gonna laugh again. And then you pray for them, they should go through this. And then there are people that come over and they say, you know, we go to work, we put a smile on our faces, we do everything for our children, whatever, but you and I know that it's all a mask. And I've learned to give credit to that mask because it gives them the power to do what they feel should be done and what they want to do. But personally, my own choice is not to walk around this world with a mask on my face. It doesn't fit, it doesn't stick well. So my choice, and I was trying to pass it over to the kids. I hope, you know, once we'll have to pay for the therapy for all the mistakes we made. Basically, it was, I was reminded by the sentence by someone today, to cry when we cry, and to laugh when we laugh, and to try to preserve the full spectrum of experiences, of blessings, because we are very, very blessed in our life. We have a tremendous wound, and you know, I miss Naftali like crazy, but I have so much blessing in my life. And I remember the first day of this whole ordeal, Avi and I were sitting in our bedroom and saying, even if the worst thing should happen, we should remember that we're blessed. And again, this is something I paraphrased from something I wanted to read. My version of it says, I can feel pain, I don't have to become my pain. I can feel sorrow, I don't have to become my sorrow. And in my inner landscape, there's so many other forces and you know, everything, the whole experience. It would be so stupid of me to take the bucket of black paint and spill it all over. And it would also be a great ingratitude. So I think the kids are with that. Nama said something like, Ima, do you still put on your makeup only when you get to work so you can cry on the way? And I was like, I almost got a heart attack hearing that. And I said, okay, you wouldn't want her to think it's business as usual, right? So I said, okay, Mama, look, it's not like every day the whole way I cry, but I reserve the right to cry. And basically that's the way we've been handling this. On the other hand, and this will be the last topic I'm speaking about, I'm sorry this is long, the support we got from Am Yisrael and an endless amount of amazing things that had happened as a result of these short lives. The rabbi said, a short life is better than no life at all. You know, in the eyes of eternity, I don't know what the difference between 16 years and 60 years are. Eyal, Gilad, and Naftali touched so many lives and hopefully affected them for the better and brought us together. There was a community in Scottsdale, Arizona, just one of many, but this is an example I like, that collected 1,000 mitzvot in the merit of the boys. And they made this little clip of, one person said, I'm going to kosher my kitchen, and another person said, I'll put on tefillin once a week, and the rabbi's kids, I'll say Kriyat Shema, I'll do Netilat Yadayim, and so goes on, a long collection of mitzvot. And there was a lady that caught me afterwards and said, look, I didn't want to say this on film, but the mitzvah I chose was to date only Jews. And I was thinking, you know, for 16-year-old kids, you have quite an effect on generations. And in the continuation of the film, the rabbi there says, Rabbi Pinchas Arush, amazing person, says, we heard on the tape the terrorists saying, put down your heads, put down your heads. And this is our way of holding our heads up straight and strong and going on. And in the little clip that was in the beginning, we saw Yair Lapid. He was a minister of Treasury at the time, from a very, 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 very secular background, saying how we need each other at this point. And he also chose to say exactly the same words that Rav Dov Zinger, of a totally different background, said. He was mentioning the minhag before you pray to say, Yareini mekavel al atzmi mitzvat aseh shel v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, to love my neighbor and myself, whatever, I don't know the English terms. And two so different people said exactly the same words. There was something real there. Rav Dov went on in his eulogy and said, you know how people say that where there are two Jews, there are already three opinions? So I want to remind you, where there are two Jews, there are three opinions, but one heart. And today when I think of those words, I think that the three opinions are just as essential as the one heart. We come from a culture of a bet midrash, of learning and arguing and fighting it through, because we have our truth and we actually care about our truth. I have this American concept of pluralism, which actually means I don't care what you think, I don't care what I think, let's not argue about it. A Jewish point of view says, let's go, let's argue for it the whole way with a warm temperament, but on the basis of respect, of love, of one family. I have a friend that met Natan Sharansky the day after the funeral of our boys, and Natan said, I felt, you know how they say that in Matan Torah, everybody's souls were there, those that were there and those that weren't. I felt that way in the funeral, that we were all there, those that were physically there and those that might have been in Toronto. And then this friend told me this, and he turned to me and he said, well, if this is like Matan Torah, so where's the Torah coming out of this? And I was thinking, and if this was such a high point, so how come just a few months later we felt, we were deep in a horrible election? But really in Matan Torah, within days we were in Chet HaEgel, and day-to-day life is never up there. The question is the direction, where we're headed, and how we view ourselves. And maybe if we could make this, minor, in Israel they say, yeah, we're very good at war. But they mean it in a cynical way, like that's not the real thing. The real thing is how we behave on traffic lights and on El Al and stuff like that. But really, this is the foundation of who we are, and the connections are true, and the connections are real. And I'll end by mentioning a project we're involved with. It's called Unity Day. It's part of the Jerusalem Unity Prize and Gesher that are helping us with it, and the local Kashik family, which I must mention because they're helping us so much. We have hundreds and hundreds of events all over the world. This year it's going to be in June 1st because we wanted it still to be in the school year, but basically over the years, Bezrat Hashem, it will be somewhere around the Yortzeit where we stop and remember how good we knew, how close we felt. And we try to turn to someone on the right and someone on the left, someone that I don't know, dresses all different and dreams all different and has different hopes for the Jewish people, and still remember that they're my brother and they're my sister and we're connected for real. It's just real. So I want to end with a gift of music. Neftali's friend and Gilad's friends from Makor Chaim, they had to go back to 12th grade, and it was a complicated year, take school and deal with laws and be 18. And they approached a singer named David, and they wrote together the words and the music for this song. David wanted very badly that different kinds of singers, Hasidic and secular and everything in between, will join him in the singing, and so did the families and the friends. And it's called Ptach Libcha, Open Your Heart. I just want to end by thanking you for your open hearts and wishing us all a future together. Thank you.
וציוו לנו חיים, עלו לתומם כאייל נעקר על מזבח האבנים. שמיים נחו מעל הגלעד, והארץ רעשה מתוך נפתולי הלב שדעד. חיכו צמודה השלושה, ורחמים על מגך, כל המלאות נשמע. השמיים ניצבים על דבריך, ובארץ תעשה לנו נחמה. ומצרים קרוב עליי מרדים, התגלו במסך האבק, שקרים שבתוך מנהרות מסתתרים מזימות שלמרו למרחק. הרוח נשבה ישנה חדשה, וקרבה לבבות רחוקים. מתוך תעצומות הנפש ביקשה לא לקרוא, גם שלא לא מבינים. ורחמים על מגך, כל המלאות נשמע. השמיים ניצבים על דבריך, ובארץ תעשה לנו נחמה. בתוך הטירוף ונרדף ונרדף תעלה זעקה לשלום הנוסף והעם שהיה. שנאת חינם יתרחב בחיבור אחים. בשמיים ניצבים על דבריך, ובארץ תעשה לנו נחמה. כל המלאות נשמע. עשה לנו נחמה.
Please remain in the room for a few more minutes. We have a quick presentation for our special honored guest. I just would like to say on behalf of BAYT Sisterhood and the entire shul and community that we would, sorry, I knew this would be hard to speak after Rachelle. We'd like to thank you so much, Rachelle, for bringing us together tonight to hear your inspirational words of strength and courage. You touched our hearts back then, 2 summers ago, and you touched our hearts tonight. With this presentation alone, you've managed to unite our city, and you are a true hero to all of us, and I hope you will carry our feelings of love and support with you back to Israel. At this time, I'd like to call upon Mr. Rosie Rosenzweig to make this presentation to you on behalf of the BAYT.
Rachelle, the 3 boys, your son, Naftali Fraenkel, Eyal Yifrach, and Gilad Shar, Hashem Yinakem Damam, have become a symbol of unity among the Jewish people. You, Rachelle Fraenkel, have become a symbol of unity and hope. Hope through faith and prayer. Your very presence is inspiring, but your openness, your words, your frankness are empowering. When the 3 boys were kidnapped, this Kehila, like so many Jews around the world, prayed for their safe return. When we learned their fate, we mourned for the 3 boys. We cried with the Fraenkel, Yifrach, and Shar families. But tonight, we, the members of the BAYT, honor the lives of Naftali, Eyal, and Gilad by dedicating a chair on the bima at the front of the main sanctuary in their memory. Rachelle, when you return home, please tell your husband Avi, please tell Uri and Iris Yifrach, please tell Ofer and Bat Galim Shar that Naftali's, Eyal's, and Gilad's lives have been honored in a makom kadosh that is worthy of them. The BAYT is not only a makom kadosh because it is a house of prayer and learning. The BAYT is a makom kadosh because its foundation is based on this principle: one people, one Torah, one land. We are one people. Your children, Rachelle, are our children. Our children, Rachelle, are your children. And that is why we refer to the 3 boys as our 3 boys. Our Moradatra, Harav Daniel Kurapkin, is outspoken about achdut and love of our fellow Jews. Our Rav reaches out to all Jews, regardless of their observance, regardless of their synagogue affiliation, regardless of their gender. We follow one Torah. We follow its mitzvot. We follow its moral standards. We have one land, Eretz Yisrael. And we know that hope for the Jewish people is dependent on one factor: a strong and secure Medinat Eretz Yisrael. Rachelle, many families from the BAYT have made Aliyah. Hundreds of our children have spent 1 year, 2 years, many years learning at yeshivot, in seminaries, studying at university, or participating in other programs. A very significant number of our children have or currently are serving in Sahel. A very significant number of our children have made Aliyah. Many of those have married and are raising families in Eretz Yisrael. One people, one Torah, one land. But not one out of the 3, not 2 out of the 3, all 3. 3 out of 3, each one equal in importance. One people, one Torah, one land. And this, Rachelle Fraenkel, is what makes the BAYT a makom kadosh. In addition to the dedication of the chair, the BAYT will be contributing to the Rav Eitam and Naamah Henkin Memorial Fund. Rav Eitam and Naamah, as you said, were murdered by Palestinian terrorists last Chol Moed Sukkot, leaving behind 4 children. Rav Eitam and Naamah are the son and daughter-in-law of Rabbi and Rabbanit Henkin. Rabbanit Henkin, as we know, is the founder and dean of Nishmat, and Rabbanit Henkin was a scholar in residence at the BAYT. May the memory of Rav Eitam and Naamah be a blessing for Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. Rachelle, the BAYT Brotherhood's 14th annual mission to Israel will once again be led by our Rav. It will happen in December, and please consider joining us at the Malava Malka we will be hosting on December the 17th at the King Solomon Hotel in Yerushalayim, just as Rabbanit Henkin did last year. I would now ask you, Rachelle, our Rav, Rabbi Karabkin, our Assistant Rabbi, Rabbi Spitz, our President, Alan Steinfeld, our Sisterhood Presidents, Bela Fortinsky and Heather Tannen, and Moish Posner, representing the Brotherhood, to come up to the podium for the presentation of the dedication. And we thank the very talented Ora Rosenzweig for preparing the flag.
The plaque reads, and there are 3 of these. By the way, we invite you all to go see the chair afterwards. It's in the shul, and we're going to be davening Ma'ariv for the men right afterwards anyway, so you might want to come into the shul. The plaque on the chair reads, L'zichram shel shlosha hane'arim shalanu, Gilad Michael Sha'ar, Yaakov Naftali Fraenkel, Ayal Yifrach, Hashem Yikom Damam, Charut Belev Ha'am HaYehudi, Chibartem Otanu La'aguda Echad. That in memory of our 3 boys, Gilad Sha'ar, Naftali Fraenkel, Ayal Yifrach, engraved on the hearts of all of the Jewish people, you made us one. Hukdash Alidei Chevrei Kila Kedosha Beit Avram Yosef, Tet Iyar Tafshin Ayin Vav, dedicated by members of the BAYT, May 17th, 2016.